Alright, let's see how well you understood Aristotle's rhetorical triangle with ethos, logos, and pathos. I'm going to type the answers into this Word document and you can compare what you wrote in your composition notebook. Then you can make any adjustments that you think are necessary. So, Aristotle's rhetorical triangle explains how important the three key components of rhetoric really are. The first key component is understanding the speaker. The second key component is understanding the subject. And the third key component is understanding the audience. He chose a triangle because it equally shows the importance of these three pieces. So by simply adding a triangle here, you can see that if I were to label each of the points of this triangle, we would be able to see the relationship. Let me go ahead and insert a text box so that we can see this visually. Alright, as you can see on this visual, I added subject, speaker, and audience to the three corners of the triangle. Now, these are not relegated only to these corners of the triangle. Rather, this is just a visual that shows you that you can't have one without it affecting the other two. Therefore, it's really important that when you're crafting a piece of writing or a speech, that you pay attention to what your subject is, how you're coming across as the speaker, and what your audience wants to hear. I'm sure that you've probably had a conversation every now and then where maybe the person isn't paying attention to you. That's because you haven't told them why they should listen to you. And that's where becoming a speaker and understanding your role really plays a key part. Maybe they don't believe you. Maybe they ask questions like, "No way, that's not true. How do you know?" Well, that means that they are still questioning the subject. How are you credible enough to talk about this subject? And maybe the audience just isn't listening either. While that ties in with the speaker, it also ties into the audience. You haven't made them care about the subject. Therefore, if you don't pay attention to one of these three corners, then your triangle becomes more of an isosceles rather than equilateral. You never want to have an isosceles in English. You always want to have an equilateral. Now, how do ethos, logos, and pathos play a part in this? Well, ethos, logos, and pathos are what we call the persuasive appeals. This is how people manipulate the audience. The first persuasive appeal that we'll talk about is ethos. That is the credibility. How do you come across as a speaker? Do you let people know that you have the qualifications to talk about this subject? Do you try and relate? Do you try and establish what is known as common ground? Common ground means that you're trying to relate to the audience. You can kind of think of this when politicians all of a sudden become blue-collar workers from a hard-working family, even though they ride the limos every day to the office. They are trying to seek common ground with the people that they are talking to. Ethos is really important. Do you come across as credible? Do you try to establish common ground with your audience? The second persuasive appeal is pathos. I call this passionate pathos because this is the emotional appeal. You are trying to make the audience laugh, cry, get angry, but you are trying to evoke some sort of emotion out of the audience. Unfortunately, this is what too many arguments rely upon. They try to stoke the emotions rather than having something to really talk about. So pathos, while it is good and it will engage the audience, if your argument is only based on pathos, then it's going to fall short. And the final persuasive appeal is logos. This is the facts and logic guy. Logos is the nuts and bolts of your message. You have to have something that you're speaking about. You have to have a clear thesis, and that's where logos comes in. But again, each of these pieces, subject, speaker, and audience, could be juxtaposed with logos, pathos, and ethos. So you could almost put ethos here, pathos here, and logos here. Not that those are relegated to those 3 points, but just so that you realize that any argument that you wish to establish has to have equal parts ethos, equal parts pathos, and equal parts logos. Without these 3 pieces, then your argument is sure to fall flat. Well, that's it for the DNA part. This can actually cover the first 2 questions on your worksheet that cover Chapter 1 in your textbook. If any of this is still unclear, please don't hesitate to come see me face to face. But just remember, knowing the subject, knowing how you come across as the speaker, and knowing who your audience is equally important as establishing ethos, pathos, and logos in your argument as well. These are the fundamental steps to the study of rhetoric.